La storia non è libri, parole sulla carta. La storia è il vissuto delle persone. E secondo me in questa maniera si riesce a trovare il vissuto delle persone e rivedere la storia. People. And life of people and death of people in this case too.
I don't know in history where I've ever read about where we as African American people have liberated another people. I don't think it exists. A liberation of another people by African American troops. Yeah, the U.S. Army liberated. You know, we're in France, but African American troops? I don't think so. I don't think so. Go to Florence, if you will. See the crosses upon the hill. Notice the murals on the wall. Buffaloes in arrows represent us all. Walk the green grass, crosses, row on row. Young black men killed attacking the foe. It is God who looks upon this field, blessed men who fought and would not yield. Jim Crow was there, blocking their way, causing them grief day after day. These men fought evil that enveloped the land. They battled for freedom with one tied hand.
I was taking care of the bed and breakfast that is in my parents' house, Villa Orsini. I wanted to see if I could find something more interesting or, historical about it. So I googled Villa Orsini Città Somma, and it appeared Black Warrior, written by Ivan J. Houston, and he was talking about his own experience coming to Lucca, the town that they liberated. So I got in touch with the publishers, and they said, I would like to put the story that is in the book on my website, but I don't know how to do because I need a permission or whatever. Then Ivan sent me an email, and I was telling him what I wanted to do, and he wrote me back telling me, I'm one of the last Buffalo soldiers.
I had been a Buffalo soldier since my enlistment as an 18-year-old in 1943. I joined over 15,000 men in the 92nd Infantry Division of the U.S. Fifth Army. My great-grandfather, Benjamin Franklin Talbot, was in the 5th Colored Regiment of the Union Army, the U.S. Civil War. After the Civil War, Buffalo soldiers served on the American frontier with distinction in the U.S. 9th and 10th Cavalries. The men were honorably named the Buffalo Soldiers by the Plains Indians for their bravery in battle. As the frontier wars came to an end, B.F. Talbot moved his family from Canada to Los Angeles in about 1886. Here's my great-grandfather in downtown Los Angeles holding my mother Doris when she was still a baby. He died in 1901, and I know his widow received a pension, an Army pension, because he fought in the Civil War. On my father's side, my great-grandfather, and great-grandmother came out of slavery in Georgia and migrated west, settling in Northern California. My cousin Robert was in the Spanish-American War with Admiral Dewey as they bombarded the Philippines. The Buffalo Soldiers were the first to fight their way to the top of San Juan Hill with Teddy Roosevelt.
My father? Well, yes, he was a second lieutenant in the 92nd Buffalo Division in the artillery in France in World War I.
I can remember playing with my dad's World War I helmet and gas mask in front of his mother's home in Oakland, California.
When I went into the Army, he told me about things that I should look for. He said, when an artillery shell goes over your head, it sounds like a freight train. I found that that was a very true statement.
Well, reading your book was a pleasure because I guess where we were, we didn't see anything except the guy next to you and the guy there.
Yeah.
And what's in front, but you gave me the big picture. I didn't know what was happening around.
We were all just young, 18, 19, 20 years old for the most part, from all parts of the country, but a lot of guys from the South.
I remember going by myself from Fort Sheridan, Illinois, down to Fort Benning in Georgia. I went with my orders, and it was my first taste of Jim Crowism. When I got off the train at Columbus, Georgia, there was a Lieutenant Amos from the ASDP that had come to pick me up to take me to Fort Benning. And he said, wait in this waiting room. He went to get my duffel bag. When I was in the waiting room, an MP came in, he said, you can't wait here. He said, and I said, well, Lieutenant Amos told me to wait here.
Yeah.
He said, but you have to wait in the black. I said, look, Lieutenant Amos told me to wait. And he said, where are you from? I said, well, I was from Massachusetts. He said, well, I'm from Rhode Island. And the MP said, come stand in the door with me then, and we'll wait for Lieutenant Amos to come back. My first taste of segregation.
Well, I guess mine was on the train going from Fort MacArthur, San Pedro, California, to Fort Benning, and when we got to El Paso, Texas, got off the train in El Paso, and that's when the first time I ever saw white waiting room, colored, white, colored, drinking fountain, white, colored. Then the situation changed on the train because we were eating, and me and one other black soldier, and the other 30 guys were white soldiers. And but after that, they put a curtain around our table where we ate.
Oh, you had a private dining room, huh?
Private dining room, right. Then, in Fort Benning, Georgia, when you got there, if you ever went to the movie theater, you had to sit in the back row.
Yes.
The headquarters of the 92nd Buffalo Division was in Fort Huachuca, Arizona, and there were separate officers' clubs. For white officers had their club, black officers had their club.
Jim Crow those were the laws and customs that were in effect in our country and in our military. They restricted African Americans from eating at certain places, from drinking in certain drinking fountains.
I never did have a complex on that issue. Yeah, it was, to me, it was just, it was ridiculous to even think that, discrimination, or that I wasn't as good as anybody. That never was a part of my life, even though I experienced it from time to time.
I didn't know, actually, that there was this kind of segregation in the Army, and I didn't know what they really passed through. We are so riconoscenti, thankful. We are so thankful, and we cannot really understand that people in the USA doesn't know this and doesn't celebrate them.
Ivan J. Houston and very few other men were college men who had taken the Army General Classification Test, which scores 1 through 5, 1 being highest, and had scored highly enough that they were promised if they went through basic training, they would then be allowed to go to engineering school and get a degree while serving in the Army under the ASTP, the Army Specialized Training Program. While he was in the midst of basic training, our losses were so great in Europe and in the Pacific that General Marshall canceled the ASTP, and Ivan and the other college men were dumped into this newly created division with a body of men forming most of the 15,000 members of the 92nd Division who were barely literate, if not totally illiterate, and who had, according to Chicago attorney sent by the president to investigate the 92nd Division, they had 90% had scored 4s and 5s. Now, these were Southern black men, largely rural, who were drafted in, thought this was a white man's war, and suddenly found themselves in distant Italy and told to run up a mountain where there are machine guns waiting to shoot you down.
The Germans were sitting on top of a mountain, and they had these 88 artillery pieces facing straight down the bottom of the mountain. So they sent them to try to take this mountain facing these artillery pieces, and they took a disastrous amount of casualties.
All of our top officers were white. Our junior officers were mostly black, mainly college men. Yeah, and they suffered tremendously. So many of them lost their lives. I was not an officer, I was an enlisted man.
Some of the white officers, particularly from the South, couldn't take it. They talk about the blacks and their family plantation and things like that.
Here we were, getting ready to go into combat under orders that no black officer would ever command a white soldier, no matter what the conditions were. That ultimately led, I believe, to some very disastrous actions.
I think with time and with Ivan's learning and absorbing, that Ivan discovered reinforcements for what may have been before then just sensations or observations or perceptions, but not fortified by documented and redocumented fact. I think he came to see how major a force racism was in the creation and the governance of the 92nd Division, and he came to see how the unit was built to fail.
The Negro officer, in general, fails to meet minimum infantry combat standards. He lacks pride, aggressiveness, a sense of responsibility, and has practically no command capability above the grade of captain. His race consciousness seriously affects his general efficiency. He does not comprehend the merit system of promotion. The Negro officer does have utility in the artillery and the services. The Negro non-commissioned officer cannot be developed in self-confidence and leadership within reasonable time for emergency infantry combat use. He lacks pride, is careless and undependable, and cannot induce enlisted men under his command to follow him in danger, principally because he himself is afraid of infantry combat.
The 366 was a independent, all-black infantry regiment. They had a very proud history and were sent overseas, and then they were attached to the 92nd Infantry Division. General Allman was quoted by the Honorable Edward Brooke, the U.S. Senator from Massachusetts, who was also a member of the 366, Senator Brooke wrote that Almond stood before the soldiers and in an angry and condescending tone said,
"Your Negro friends and your Negro press back in the States have been clamoring for you to go into combat. Well, since you asked for it, let's see how you like it. You can believe I will make you fight and suffer your share of casualties."
Casualties of the 366 have never been properly recorded. All we know is how many of these Buffalo soldiers are buried at the Florence American Cemetery and Memorial.
We were freeing and liberating these people, and we ourselves were not really completely liberated in our own country. These several hundred gave their lives to liberate those people. There is a somewhat of a sadness that does come over me because they gave their all.
When he wrote me like this, the first idea I had was, wow, he's a very nice person, because he was responding in a very nice way. And I said, why don't you come and visit, you know? You've been here, you wrote a book, and, you know, come and visit us.
The Italians celebrate the liberation of the city of Lucca and that part of Tuscany every year. And they've sort of invited me to lead the reenactors, the procession of World War II Army vehicles in entering the city, because the Buffalo soldiers were the ones that freed Lucca. In 1944, I got to the gate, but I never got into Lucca. We bypassed Lucca. We saw it, we saw its moats, we saw its walls, but we didn't go in Lucca. You know, it's such a fabulous looking place that with that wall and the moat that I always wanted to take a real good look inside Lucca and see what it was all about. To me, it just doesn't seem as though it's 70 years. It just seems like it's almost yesterday. When we got off the boat in Naples, we could just see how poor the people were. They were hungry. They were so hungry.
They were hungry.
It was usually an older woman that was at the end of our mess line. You know, they just wouldn't let us throw it away.
But it was so good because that broke the ice.
Yeah.
Because we got so many friends over there. They were beautiful people. When I went back in 2004, I got off the train at Via Reggio, and I went across the street to get directions to the President Hotel. And the man said, "You were with the Buffalo Soldiers?" And he hugged me.
Yeah.
His wife came from the back and hugged me. And it was such a good feeling.
The amazing thing to me is after so many years, these people are still celebrating their liberation by the Buffalo Soldiers.
And it's passed down generation to generation.
It is. Is that they even apparently teach it in the schools. So it's part of their memory. It's embedded. It just makes me feel good to know that with all of the problems that we had before that, during the time we were fighting, and even after, you know, here in the U.S., we thought we were coming back and be a different country, but it wasn't. We were still second class. But here these people, 7,000 miles away in Italy, are celebrating their liberation by us, African-American soldiers.
You know, kind of after all we went through there, and you came home, and it was not too far from here, where my wife and I went to an open house, and they wouldn't let us in the door. Not far from this restaurant here.
Yeah.
On it. and back comes a kind of a, it hurt. It hurt.
Yeah.
It hurt.
You know, when I went back to University of California, Berkeley, then I married. The university wouldn't give me married students housing. If you were, you know, not black, you could get married students housing.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, what we fought for certainly didn't gain anything here in this country, not at that time.
I guess that's when you question about what in the world did we do this for? We have people over on the other shore, very happy, gratitude. Over here, a big difference. And I don't know, it kind of leaves you with some lingering senses of bitterness. And it's something that I hope I don't pass on to my grandchildren. But yes, I do have a sense of bitterness about what we'd gone through and the way we were treated when we came back. Mm-hmm.
Everybody was so excited. Everybody had a story to tell, and everybody wanted to greet him. He's really gentle, calm, but he has kind of, you know, I would say sprite. Would it work? Frizzanti thing. He never take a step behind in any case. He's a warrior, but a gentle warrior, I would say. I don't know how to explain him. He's amazing. He really is amazing. As he used to say, he is something. So all those mountains,
Yeah.
and going there, that direction is where you came from. That direction.
Yeah, because this is one, because the tanks had difficulties because the Germans blew all the roads up. After Matea picked us up from the airport, she took us to the villa. It was getting a little late, so we couldn't see too much. I knew there was a reenactors encampment nearby.
We got in contact with Vittorio Lino Biondi. He did a great job because we were in contact with reenactors. So he put all the things together to organize the welcoming to him, to Ivan.
Storia è un messaggio forte di valore e di coraggio di una generazione di afroamericani che a pieno titolo può considerarsi americana, identica agli americani bianchi. Hanno combattuto con impegno, con coraggio e con valore. Hanno avuto i loro problemi, li hanno risolti e sono rientrati a pieno titolo.
We crossed the Arno River coming north September 1st, 1944. Even though our headquarters had been bombed, that was the first day that I felt that the Germans were shooting directly at me. Yeah, I wasn't afraid, but I didn't want to get hit either. So, you know, when they shot at this vehicle I was in with my good friend Macbeth, who was asleep, we heard the fire and, the explosions right at us. So we got out of the vehicle and hit the ground. After not a long time, we got back in the vehicle and continued. And my friend Macbeth was still there in the vehicle asleep. So, it was sort of surreal.
He had a blessed life at that moment.
Yes.
Did you volunteer for patrol or did they
I
assign you?
volunteered to cross the Arno.
Really?
With our scouts. Wow. But they wouldn't let me. Around the 4th or 5th, we did liberate the Villa Orsini, which is now the Villa Dogana, La Dogana, where we're now staying. And we had very fierce fighting in the village of Ripafrata, where we had a lot of casualties as a result of that battle. We came to Seravezza from a city called Pietrasanta, probably about 3 or 4 miles away. But it took us all day because it was raining, it was thundering, it turned to night, we couldn't see ahead of ourselves. We were stumbling all over a very narrow trail. The Germans were firing shells at us. It was a very terrifying trail. Shells were landing so close to us that when the shrapnel came down, you know, some of it would burn through my clothes. And, you know, so they were getting my clothes. They didn't hit me, but the shrapnel is hot. And then also the smell, I thought I was being gassed because the gunfire, the cordite smells, and you know, it sort of makes you ill.
Seravezza, it brings back some not pleasant memories, but also some pleasant memories. We were out on a roadblock up the river. At night, German prisoners, Germans would come down to give themselves up. And they'd always say, we're Polish, Polish.
Yeah.
And then, but they're dressed in German uniform.
Yeah.
So instead of taking them all back, we kept one because he knew how to play chess.
Oh, okay.
And we kept him in the roadblock, and we played chess for days with him.
Really?
Oh, yes. And the other, if you didn't know how to play chess, you had to go back to the
But
prison.
you kept him there playing chess
for
with you.
several days.
Well, I guess he got good food at the time anyway.
Well, talking about food, the partisans were with us, and of course, you know, the sea rations and all like that. And I remember one partisan was with us, and he put together all of this food, a lot of food, and we watched him eat it. And when he finished, all he could say was, "Poco mangiare," little food.
Little food? He ate all?
He ate it all. Those are good memories we have.
You did mention Christmas Day. You know, the very next day, the Germans attacked.
I know, yeah. They got the 366 and the 365th.
Yeah.
They got them good.
That was where they attacked at Somocolonia.
Yeah.
And that's where Lieutenant Fox made his stand. You know, he got the Congressional Medal of Honor.
Finally.
Yeah, finally. Yeah, it only took, what, 50 years, 60 years?
Yeah.
Some of the guys I came over on the ship, the Mariposa, and they were killed up near Somocolonia in an ambush. A guy named McKinley Scott, a guy named Joe Gray. Then there was a guy who was almost right next to me when I thought he was just wounded, but apparently he either got killed or died of his wounds. A guy named Hugh Portee. He's buried there. One of our really outstanding company commanders, Jesse Jarman, I company commander, and he was killed February the 8th, 1945.
Oh, you remember Reuben Horner?
He was a great, great
Wasn't he
soldier.
great?
Yeah, I write about him, and I think he was definitely the outstanding officer in our battalion. The guy had 3 silver stars.
And Purple Hearts.
And bronze stars and Purple Hearts.
He get wounded, he come
Yeah,
back.
he'd come
get
back.
wounded,
Yeah,
come back.
You got, what happened to you? I think we were
Well,
talking about that battle. When was it again?
It was February the 9th. You know, we went in the big attack, big division attack. And we went up Hill X and Hill Y. And I got hit on Hill Y. And I didn't know I was really hit. I had a BAR.
You were a BAR, Browning automatic rifle. That's heavy.
It was heavy. I was 135 pounds.
Yeah.
And you give it to the smallest guy in the outfit. And Luther Rucker was my ammo bearer. He carried the extra ammunition. And he got hit, and I was helping him down off the hill. They were throwing everything at us, hand grenades and mortars and small arms, everything. And I don't remember when I was hit, and finally the arm started hurting, and I thought it was Luther's blood, but it turned out to be mine.
My goodness. No, well, when I got wounded, it was, I think, on the 9th of April. It was after we crossed the Cinquale Canal. And you know, we had captured this big villa, thank goodness to all those villas. And I was just coming in the front door, and you know, I think it was a mortar round blew me through the door. And you know, I found a piece of shrapnel stuck in my arm, small piece. My back was stinging, so I knew something was wrong. And I checked to see if all my limbs were there. And after I got myself together, down to the medic, he stripped off my combat jacket and shirt and everything and gave me a shot of tetanus, sprinkled sulfur on it, wrapped it up, told me to put my clothes back on and sent me back to the line.
Oh,
yeah.
God.
All set. What is this? Oh, for God. Hi. Good morning. Good morning. My goodness. Oh my. You're a captain.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Wow. Oh, I have to salute you. That's wonderful. Wow.
The good conduct.
That's good conduct. So
Yeah.
you were a good soldier.
Yeah, she doesn't believe it. She says
This is Service Corps.
Yeah.
Service Corps. Oh, and the Buffalo. She was probably in one of the service battalions of the Buffalo soldiers. That's great. It was the next morning that we saw all of these reenactors, people playing Buffalo soldiers, reenacting as members of the 5th Army, other divisions that fought in the Italian campaign. It was astonishing. Wow. Amazing.
Just a replica.
Yeah. A replica.
Yeah, it never fired a shot.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we used to go like that. Like that, like that. Like that. Like that. Like that. Like that. Not so good.
The Italians have a real strong sense of family and a real strong sense of tribe, for lack of a better term. So when somebody fights for you, that story gets passed from generation to generation because they're very tight in terms of their families.
I think the reenactors take pride in the fact that they can play American soldiers.
Perché io faccio il figurante di Buffalo? Perché mio nonno ha combattuto la parte di francese con De Gaulle. Non sanno proprio che hanno combattuto i ragazzi di colore qui in questo paese. Dunque, per fare capire a tanta gente ignorante che sono razzismo, che loro non lo sanno che c'è qualcuno che è venuto dall'altra paese. Se questa persona è il razzismo, che non amava un'altra persona, non può lasciare il suo paese e andare a combattere una guerra che non è anche la sua.
You know, because you are a Buffalo soldier now, you know, I wanted to give you this book. It's, I've signed it. This is a bookmark which was drawn by a street artist in Rome. It does explain a lot about our role in this war.
Ti ringrazio tanto. Mi ha battezzato lui allora Buffalo Soldiers.
So you just baptized me Buffalo Soldier.
Good, good,
E
good.
mi impegnerà tanto, lui farà dare anche tutto il mio proprio cuore per far capire alla gente che esiste Buffalo Soldiers.
Ho scelto di fare questa cosa perché questo sentimento, non so specificarlo, ma credo proprio un sentimento che ho dentro è stato trasmesso da mio padre, perché mi ha sempre raccontato, mi ha sempre raccontato gli episodi cruenti della guerra, e lui si ricorda tantissimo di questi soldati, lui le chiama i Mori, questi giganti buoni che l'hanno salvato dall'occupazione nazista, dai tedeschi, e quindi mi ha sempre trasmesso questa sua consapevolezza di cosa significa la libertà. E io dietro a questo suo sentimento mi sono appassionato e ho seguito, appena ho potuto, dare un piccolo contributo e cercare di far capire soprattutto alla nostra generazione, di far capire che pochi anni fa, perché 70 anni non sono tanti, c'è stata una tragedia immane. Noi cerchiamo proprio di trasmettere alle persone che questa cosa non deve più accadere, la guerra non deve più succedere, non ci deve essere una cosa più, perché non c'è cosa più brutta della guerra.
Julius Caesar, Pompey the Great, and Crassus, the three most powerful men in Rome, met there in 57 BC in Lucca.
We couldn't appreciate all that, could we then in those days?
Obviously, the Romans, you know, have a fantastic history for so many hundreds of years. And really, you know, in the soil there, you know, our blood is with the blood of the Romans.
Few people think in these contexts when he says, our blood mingled with those of the Romans. To me, that's powerful. What he's seeing here is a larger picture. Ivan has seen what his moment was in passing through this great carnival of life, and his help to save civilization and the free world. Now, what the hell? Can you have anything grander than that?
Our role in this part of Italy came in 1944, 45. It was apparently a very traumatic period for the Italian people in Tuscany because it was divided between the rule of the Italian government, which had been liberated south of the Arno River in Rome, and then the northern part of Italy, which was still under Mussolini, the fascists, and actually controlled by Hitler and Nazi Germany. And during that period of time, many of the men, even young men, children almost, were conscripted to build the Gothic line, this line of fortifications which extends from the western shore all the way across Italy to the Adriatic Sea, over 170 miles. They had to work on it, you know, they had no alternative. So they remember this. It's a deep, deep memory. They remember the fact that there were Italians, partisans fighting with us, the 5th Army, the 92nd Division, my regiment.
He spent 5 months with the Buffalo
Oh, wow.
Division.
Yes.
Sono stato 5 mesi con voi in prima linea. Eravamo a Rosina noi partigiani.
They were in Rosina, in the next-by town, as partisans, and they spent 5 months with the Buffalo soldiers.
Wow. Good.
He was there with them.
Quando andavano di pattuglia, noi li guidavamo.
When you guys were scouting, they were leading you.
Yes, I know.
Conoscevamo
Sì.
Because they knew all the trails
yes,
and all the
yes.
places. Lui dice sì, me lo ricordo.
Well, thank you.
Tanto tempo è passato.
A long time ago, so
A
much
long
time went
ago,
by.
yes. Almost 7 decades.
Quasi 7 decadi.
Almost, sì.
70 anni.
Yeah, io...
Quasi
I'm
70 anni.
8.
You see, he's 88. He's 1925, like you.
Grazie, great. That's wonderful.
Tiriamo avanti.
We keep going.
Yes.
Va bene.
Very tough.
Siamo forti.
Yeah, very tough.
Siamo di tempra dura.
Ci hanno temprato.
They made us tough.
Yes, they did.
We were soft kids. They made us tough.
Un particolare silenzio. Io ricordo i vostri ufficiali bianchi.
I remember the white officers that were leading you guys.
Molto mascalzoni.
They were rascals,
Oh.
disrespectful.
Noi andavamo d'accordo con loro.
We got along with you guys of the
Yeah,
Buffalo,
but the
but not with your officers.
Yeah, is that right? Yeah.
Not with the white officers.
Non detto.
Yeah.
But this wasn't said. It's a
Yeah,
secret.
I know. Oh, okay. I understand.
Segnalalo di andare.
Comprendo.
Ci segua che poi glielo dici.
Okay.
Sì, poi
We want to...
You know, with the kids, they always knew English so well when they always would say, hey, Johnny, Charlie, whatever, give me bonbon, chocolate, chewing gum. Johnny, give me souvenir. And you always kept, remember the K-ration chocolate that was
chocolate,
there?
yeah.
Well, we'd always keep the K-ration chocolate for the kids.
Arrivavamo alla sera, davanti a noi c'era una vallata e vedemmo un filare di uva, cioè le vigne, la vigna, si vedeva come se un filare si scorresse. E si cominciò, cioè cominciarono le mia mamma, le mie zie. Oh, i mori. Passò questa voce che sti mori. Io naturalmente avevo paura perché avevo solo 5 anni, quindi stavo attaccato alla mia mamma. A un certo punto arrivarono questi soldati. Devo dire che ho subito una sensazione buona perché lì montarono, arrivarono e tutti piuttosto robusti si misero a sedere su una panca dopo aver guardato un po' sospettosi e uno mi chiamò, mi mise a sedere sulle gambe. Presi una cioccolata, la prima volta che conosco la cioccolata nella vita. Scusate. Da quel momento lì, per noi, ripeto, eravamo circa una ventina di persone in questa casa. Cominciamo a rivivere, a ritrovare qualcosa da mangiare, si trovare il latte condensato, ma soprattutto io sono rimasto colpito da queste persone perché oltre avevano subito familiarizzato con noi. Non so come spiegarli. io mi sentii subito attratto da loro, così. Tanto è vero che, vi ripeto, forse perché ero più piccolino, ero poi quello che, insomma, non me ne scorderò più finché canto. E ogni volta che li rivedo davanti mi emoziono.
The British author John Jones, in his history of Lucca, writes, "The slow advance of the Allies up the leg of Italy reached the River Arno in 1944. The final battle for Lucca and its countryside began on 1st of September 1944. The American 1st Armored Division with the 370th Regiment of the all-Negro 92nd Division attached and supported by British artillery were assigned the task of capturing Monte Pisani, the commanding feature of the area, and dominating the approaches to Lucca. When this was accomplished, they were to advance down the autostrada and take Lucca. By the evening of the 2nd of September, Monte Pisani had been occupied, and the advance on Lucca began. Bitter fighting now ensued between the 370th Regiment and the German 65th Grenadiers, accompanied by heavy artillery fire. By the evening of the 3rd September, a company of the 370th Regiment seized and held the west and south gates of the city. On the morning of the 5th September, the 2nd Battalion of the 370th Regiment entered Lucca and liberated it and subsequently garrisoned the ancient walled city.
My particular battalion didn't enter Lucca. I passed by Lucca, and I saw those wonderful walls, and I was just amazed, and looked at them and said, someday maybe I'll get to go inside. And I finally did.
Yep.
Three, four, 1, 2.
Vedere Ivan Houston entrare nel giardino è stata una grande soddisfazione, un momento di grande gioia militare. Da soldato a soldato è stata una cosa veramente appagante. È stato il giusto riconoscimento a un soldato di valore che ha operato bene nel mondo militare e benissimo nel mondo civile. Un grande esempio per le generazioni attuali e per le prossime generazioni.
The people in Italy, greeted me and I was astounded when they gave all of these mayors, they gave me gifts. They gave my daughters arms full of flowers. In the city of Bagni di Lucca, they gave me a nativity set me and the mayors and the other officials, we were paraded through the streets. I have been astounded at the reception that was given to me, and I really didn't quite understand how the Italians felt. And then I was given a letter from one of the reenactors, a guy called Flavio. I read it when I returned home, and I began to understand their feelings. Now, this is the letter. I can get a little emotional when I read parts of this letter, so you might have to excuse me on that. To Mr. Ivan J. Houston, with immense pleasure. Mr. Ivan, I felt to write a few lines to prove the immense love and eternal gratitude that I have towards the American people and especially the Buffalo Soldiers. I am 45 and have not experienced the tragedies and horrors of the greatest tragedy of humanity. If, however, I am a free man and many others like me, I can only thank you, U.S. soldiers. We have been freed from oppressor by the sacrifice of so many guys fighting on every front, from the Atlantic to the Pacific, on the sea, in the air, on the ground. My father, since I was a child, always told me that you, and this is in quotes, Mori is the name used to describe black warriors coming from Africa since the Middle Age, offered him the first chocolate long time ago in September 1944. On my mind, I have always thought you as the good giants. In fact, my heroes. So it is with immense pleasure that I write you, and in my life, I'll be able to tell of having met one of the good giants, my heroes. I wish you my best greetings of welcome, wishing you a great stay, saying thank you from the deep of my heart. That's what I finally found out was behind all of these greetings that I received when I was in Italy. I asked my hostess, Matea, well, I asked her, why did they do this? And she just said, because they love you. Thank you. Matea has really become a part of my family.
My family and his family, we all got together very well since last year. And at one point, I've been really honored from them. Because at one point, Pam told me that she has a new sister in Italy, a new family in Italy.
Being with her, associated with her, is a delightful part of my life.
I'm really glad that we have the opportunity to do this. Because Ivan is representing the best of all the Buffalo Soldiers. So, that's good to me.
Well, you know, Ivan, after thinking back, my favorite place always to go back is back to places like Via Reggio, Pietrasana, Cerveza, Forte de Mami, the towns that we were in. You feel proud of what had happened. And I sure like going back and getting the hugs. The hugs feel so good from the people.
Se io ci sono, molto probabilmente per i soldati americani. Non so se no, come potrebbe essere andata a pensare che che se mio padre ha potuto costruirsi una famiglia, ha potuto avere una sua vita privata, una sua vita in Italia, posso solo ringraziare questi soldati americani che nel settembre del 1944 hanno salvato come tanti altri come lui dall'oppressione nazista.
È stata un'esperienza durissima e queste cose non si dimenticano mai. Non si dimenticano mai perché, le ripeto, le dico, per me erano degli angeli che ci avevano aperto il braccio.
I guess you asked the question, I wonder what we did it make a change for the better?
That's what the Italians say. I asked them that. They say, you know, if you hadn't freed us, you know, we were living under fascism. They were in a terrible situation. So they say, what would have happened to us if you all hadn't come and freed us? We're free now. Yeah. You know, you gave us our freedom, which is the thing that makes me, to me, that's awesome that they would say that. That's awesome.
There's no doubt in my mind that this is the first time in history that African Americans have liberated another people. They haven't succeeded in liberating themselves, but they've liberated another people.
So we did make a change.
Yeah, we did that. Isn't
That's
that
good.
amazing? That to me is it.
I'm terrible. Thanks, John.
I'm trying to keep up with the music.
We are going to Rio. That's
Thank you.